Hello, my name is Tony Smith. I'm a CPA in Virginia Beach, and I've developed a system for aiming, and I believe it's quite logical that I would use numbers since I use them in my day. I use them in shooting pool. So I want to do three things. First of all, I'd like to show you how I aim. Secondly, I'd like to show you why I aim that way. And thirdly, I'd like to tell you some of the benefits of aiming this way. I might say that there are three methods of aiming that I'm aware of for excellence. One is God-given talent. I don't think there are a whole lot of people that have that, but God-given talent. Secondly, you can practice shooting pool 5 hours a day, 5 days a week for 5 years, and you can get pretty good at it. I believe this is the third method, and I believe it's a sound method. So let me tell you exactly how I do it. One, I determine what the angle of the ball is. And that's just like labeling it or naming it. I measure 2 feet back from the object ball to the pocket. In this case, I have this stick marked with my signature, but it's also marked 2 feet back. So that's 2 feet back. Now if the cue ball was over in this area, and I measure 2 feet back to the cue ball, which would be right here. So I look at that and I determine, and you can get pretty good at it, that's about a 5-inch angle. So I would call this a 5-inch shot. If a cue ball is over here and I measure 2 feet back to this point, and I measure 2 feet back to this point, that would be more like a 7-inch. So this is a 7-inch shot. You'll see that you can get up to 20 inches before you're in real trouble. So that's how I measure. I simply label each shot. A straight in, by the way, 2 feet back and 2 feet over would be 0 angle, so that would be a 0 shot. We all know how to shoot a straight in, and that would be a 0 shot. So I label what the shot is, anywhere up to about 20. 20 is a pretty hairy shot, by the way. I think you can feel comfortable measuring up to maybe 18 inches. So that's the first thing. That's how I measure. Now here's why I measure. This, I think, is a pretty interesting technique that afterwards you'll say, well, I knew that, but the fact of the matter is I don't see anybody employing this method. But here's simply why. Let's say the ball is there. Now I'm going to set this at 10 inches. I could set it at 5, I could set it at 8, I could set it at 15, I could set it at anything. I'm going to set it at something, it's going to be a 10. So if I said to you, if I measure 2 feet back, which is this point right here, and I measure 2 feet back towards this cue ball, such that this cue ball passed over this point here, and if that was a 10-inch shot, and I rolled the cue ball in such a way to hit the one ball would roll down the end of the stick, and it would go in the hole. I'm not going to say where to hit it, but I would say if you hit the ball properly, it would go down the stick into the hole. Well, what if it were over in this angle? If the object ball was here, and I happened to measure 2 feet back, and I measure 2 feet towards the cue ball, such that the cue ball crossed this point here, roll down there and hit the one ball at the correct place, would you agree the one ball would roll down the stick into the corner pocket? And I think you'd say, yes, if you hit it correctly. Alright, and then I would say, what happens if I aimed it in this direction, and the object ball was here, and the cue ball is back here somewhere, and I measured 2 feet back, and I measured 2 feet back towards the cue ball, such that that would be the point 2 feet back, and I measured it and it was a 10, and I shot this cue ball on this area, and I followed down the track and I hit the one ball, would you agree the one ball would go in the corner pocket? I think you'd probably say, well, yes it would if you hit it correctly. Alright, one more time. What if the one ball was here? the cue ball is back here, and I measure 2 feet back, and I measure 2 feet over towards the cue ball. The cue ball rolled down the track and hit the 1, and you say, yes, for goodness sakes, yes. Here's my point. That's exactly the same shot. That 10-inch shot that I've shown you is exactly the same shot anywhere on the table. You hit the 10 ball, you hit a 10-inch shot exactly where you hit it last time. It doesn't change. You can see that because of the rigidity of this frame here. You can see that if this was a track, it would roll down here, hit that, and nothing would change. You'd always hit the 1 ball exactly the same place. So here's what I'm going to say to you. Every 10-inch shot is exactly the same. Every 5-inch shot is exactly the same. Now I said before, a straight in is a 0 shot. 2 feet back, 2 feet over is 0. Every straight in shot is exactly the same. So here are the 2 points. One, you saw how I aim. I measure 2 feet back and I measure 2 feet over. And the second point is why. Why? It's because every shot's the same. Now, so let me ask you this. How long would it take you to learn to shoot, we'll say, a 10-inch shot? You'd get pretty bored in an hour, but you'd get pretty good at shooting a 10-inch shot in an hour. You'd get pretty good at shooting a 5-inch shot in an hour. All you have to do is learn to shoot each one of those shots in an hour, and if there's 20 shots, that's 20 hours. That's less than a week. So now the benefits of doing that. The benefits are you're shooting the same shots over and over again. Well, you do that anyway, you just don't recognize them. You don't recognize them when you walk up to the ball and you have to use judgment to figure out where you are. You don't recognize that that could be the same shot you shot 2 minutes ago. And now you're going to learn to learn where to hit it. So here you're going to learn where to hit it and you're going to recognize it. I think it's very important to recognize. Now, why is it important to use the numbers? How many times have you played 9-ball and you've had this shot and you shoot it and you make the 8-ball and the cue ball goes down here somewhere, 8 goes in the corner, and now you have that shot from the 9-ball. That's a pretty rough shot. Wouldn't it have been better to have shot this ball such that the cue ball came here, here perhaps, and went over in that corner? And you'd say, well, yes, it would be. Well, that's a different shot. Shooting that ball such that the cue ball goes here, here, and there is a different shot than just shooting it so the ball goes up against the rail. Also, what if the 9-ball's over here? How are you going to shoot that shot so that the cue ball goes up this rail and comes back here into this area? Well, you're going to put left English on it perhaps. And then I would say, that's a different shot. How much are you going to throw this ball by putting left English? Well, I've learned that if I'm going to shoot that and I measure that to be about a 7 or 8 inch, that's about an 8-inch shot, I know that I push that ball with left English 3. I push it 3 that way. That's just my stroke. So if I want to end up 8, I'd better start at 5. So I would take the 8, I know I push it 3, I'd shoot it 5, I'd probably go up against that rail, come down here for the next shot. So it shows you exactly where to hit it. Now when you're using judgment, you have this shot here and you're shooting it in the corner. You're using a lot of judgment. But if you measure that shot and you take your time and micromanage it and say that that's a 6-inch shot, you're aiming for the center of the pocket every time. And I think that's worth doing. So I'm Tony Smith. This is my system. I've been using it for 10 years. Ask anybody, a regular at the Cue Masters, and they know it. And play it back, and if it works, that's great.